We're both so like self-conscious.
So nervous.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ben Villegas Randle, the artistic director of NCTC, and I am here with...
My name is Christopher Oscar Peña, and I'm the playwright of How to Make an American Son.
Well, welcome. It is so exciting to have you here.
So good to be here. And thank you for bringing me to your home, to your officially new home.
I was going to say, how does it feel to be making your Bay Area debut as a Bay Area native?
I mean, it feels like it's about time. It feels really meaningful, really exciting, and really nerve-wracking, actually, because, you know, this play has had other productions, and my parents and my family have flown across the country for it, and I have friends who've flown across. But this is the first time, like, my parents can get out of bed and drive to the theater and see all my college roommates and high school friends and, you know, my family, and I think that's a little bit intense. Yeah.
And even, it's also even more special because the play takes place in the Bay Area.
Yeah. So, yes, it takes place in literally the Silicon Valley in 2002. And, you know, one of the reasons I always get frustrated that I haven't been produced here is most of my plays take place in the Silicon Valley, and they're about people of color who are raised here. So you would think that people would want that perspective. Yeah,
because you were from
San Jose. Yeah.
And this play is, we should say, autobiographical.
I would say it is 80% autobiographical. Yes, it is very, I think this play, and sort of since this play, almost everything I've written is very obviously about me and my family and my friends. And this play specifically, I think it's important to say, was written as the Silicon Valley was being invented. It was San Jose back then, and now it's not.
What is it like? Because this is now the fourth production of this play.
Yeah.
What is it like watching your story, parts of your childhood, your teenagehood, your adolescence, on stage, or in rehearsal?
It's, you know what I would say. What I will say is that it's less. It's not challenging to watch it. What's challenging is when you are in a room with people, an audience, we will say, who does not know that the play is about you and that you are the playwright, and then you hear them start talking about the play and the characters of the play, and you're suddenly like, oh no, and you just have to I
hate that character. I hate him.
Literally, there was one time when okay, this is embarrassing to admit, I was not a crier. I really hadn't cried since I was 13 years old. I would never cry in public. I was very much on don't ever show people your pain or whatever. And when this play first had its first production, I basically cried every night, and I had to go to therapy. And I talked to my therapist about it, and he basically was like, you sit in an audience every night where people essentially applaud at your demise and then talk shit about you while you're sitting next to them. How do you think that makes you feel? And I was like, you're right. That's so me watching it is not hard. It's how people react to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I love about the play is that I think it's quite common for plays to be written about immigrants. They have immigrant experience play. It's often a first-generation immigrant coming to America, all those kinds of things. It's so rare to read a play or to see a play about the second-generation immigrant experience, and so much so that when I read it, I know I said to you, how is this his story? This is my story.
I love that.
I went through all of these things. It was the growing up in California. It was the Madonna concert. It was.
We both went to that show.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear when you set out to write it, you were writing from your own experiences. Did you mean to kind of write that play?
I mean, I don't think at the time I would categorize it that way.
Yeah.
But I did, part of the thing is that when I was growing up, I hated the theater. I thought the theater was really boring. I mean, I don't know how you felt, but I'm like, I don't want to go see Pride and Prejudice. And I don't relate to Death of a Salesman. What is Death of a Salesman? Who are all these white people who drink all? I'm like, what are they? I had no relationship to them. And then when I would go, the plays felt really stuffy and boring. They felt they're 4 hours long. Why? And so for me, it was more about putting the people that I knew on stage, right? And then as I became, a more serious playwright, what I realized that was really lacking is that the American theater keeps saying, like, why don't young people go to the theater? Like, why don't people of color go to the theater? And I'm like, well, because you've actively not invited them. In fact, you've actively shut the door on them. And so if you want to invite people into the space, you might want to build a room that they feel seen in. So one of the things that I think has been largely missing in the theater is generational stories. And when I say generational, I mean young people. Almost every story that we see is like, an older couple, whatever, going through a divorce or whatever. But how often you see like 15-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 19-year-olds and people who are biracial, like all those identities have been void from the theater. So I think now in hindsight, the thing that you just said about our experience and our sort of like second or third generation is, it makes sense because that is what we are. But when I started to write those roles and those stories, it was more about just like not seeing myself and my friends on stage. But it's one of those hindsight things. Like now you're like, I can name it now, but I couldn't name it before.
Because you were probably working on the play much in the same way you'd be writing the play and like writing it to maybe exercise the experience, and at some point like having it's maybe only 80% you. Because at some point you have to start like as a playwright storytell.
No, it's me in the sense that like there's I call them ingredients. Like a lot of the things in the play did happen, and they are sort of like why I'm like, okay, like this thing happened, and this is what really happened in real life in terms of like the sort of fallout. But as an adult now, I'm hearing and seeing the world in a different way. And so I'm like, okay, let me reframe that experience and what would have happened if this and this had happened. And I would also say that one of the reasons I wrote this play is also because as a queer person of color, as a Latina person specifically, I grew up, and we both grew up with no representation of beautiful, healthy, joyful relationships between fathers and sons of people of color. Like every time you saw like a Black or Latino gay kid on screen, their father would beat them, hate them, throw them out. And so all the narratives that you saw were, if you are gay, your life is over. Your parents will cut you off. Whereas like my dad was like, I'm going to take you to Madonna. I'm going to take you to Cher. Do you need a Coach bag? Like, why are you single? Like, where's your boyfriend? Like the other day, my father and I were driving in San Francisco actually with the family. And one of my favorite places in the world is the Palace of Fine Arts. And so we're driving through it, like past it. And I literally said, God, I really want to get married there. And his response was, maybe I should get a boyfriend first. So like that's the kind of relationship that I have. So with my father, and I know I'm not the only one. So for me, this play was also about it's a love letter to my father, but it's also like I wanted to show the world that relationship exists, and I wanted to show those kids, the next generation of like brown and Latino, queer kids, that like their parents will love them, because I think that's important. So a lot of this stuff, I didn't set out to like necessarily tell those specific stories, but it's just that these are the people in my life, right, in our lives, that we want to represent. And
I have to say, you also do it in such a beautifully comedic way. I mean, it's like this is not like a spinach theater. This is not. This is a very serious immigrant brown person play.
Oh God, they're
it's
so
like
boring.
That's not. No. And it's so beautiful because it's so full of joy, and like everyone in the play is like both good and also makes a bunch of mistakes. And it's like this riotous like comedy. And you don't see where like the sneaky emotions are going to come from. And where that could lead to. And like, was that something that you also, was that very conscious of you to write a play that was not like your typical like the serious play?
No, I think like, listen, I always tell people, and I think that I desperately, I should not say this, I desperately want a Pulitzer Prize. Like I don't really want an Oscar or a Tony or that's not the prize I want. People are like, I want an Oscar. I'm like, whatever. I want a Pulitzer. That's what I want, right? I'm like, that's the category of people I want to be in. But I also really love the Kardashians, and so I'm like, that is sort of like the sort of the like axis of where I place it. So like in some ways, like I'm gonna be talking about these really important things that matter to us, but I'm also obviously gonna do them with some hair pulling, some screaming, and some fun, and some joy, and some candy.
Yeah.
I also like I just fundamentally believe that like people won't listen to a message if you're screaming at them, or if they have to like sit through and that they're bored. You have to kind of like trick them into it and give them a little bit of like playfulness so that they can actually pay attention.
Yeah.
Speaking
of which, speaking of candy, then.
Yeah.
So Orlando in the story gets in some trouble.
Yeah.
Chasing after white boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody tells me that in 2001, that's what you were doing as a teenager too.
I watched 2001, 2010, 2026. I don't know that has ever changed. And I don't know that this. I don't think that this is the question or narrative in the play. I think that is part of the play that Orlando is chasing the white girls, right? But this play, when I wrote it, I think I just was like, oh, this is what I was doing, and this is what I still do. But now as I write my next play, now I'm actually really interrogating that, So like the thing I'm working on now is about my awareness that a lot of my friends, and I would, are dating, who are people of color, are dating white men. And it was one of those things where I'm like, why are we doing this? And I started to write this play, and we kind of had a little workshop of it, and all people of color were like, we feel so called out. And so, and I don't know the answer to that. I think a lot of people have theories on why, and everybody has their own. But I do think that this thing that I'm engaging with now as a question is something that began as a picture in that play. I mean, your partner is Latino, but who have you historically dated?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that. Like certainly when I was Orlando's age, which was we're about the same age.
Yeah.
In 2001.
Yeah.
I remember the kind of monoculture of the boy everyone wanted to look like was like Abercrombie.
Yeah.
Yes. He was like blonde hair. Yeah. Like tan, hairless, muscle, athletic.
Yeah.
There was one aesthetic.
Only one.
There was no like alternative. There was no like, some people have like, no.
Yeah.
There was one aesthetic, and that's what it was. And so it was, it did, it definitely did its number on me when I was, an adolescent.
Yeah.
And so not only did I pursue them, but I wanted to be them, which is one of the things about your play that I also love, is that Orlando, like, he, he comes from a very successful family.
Yeah.
Or rather, I should say his father, who's an Honduran immigrant, has done very well for himself coming to America, and now is the CEO of this janitorial business.
Yeah.
And now Orlando has lots of money as a teenager.
Yeah.
And he's almost as if he feels like he can, I'm not commenting on you, but on Orlando.
Yeah.
That Orlando can almost buy himself the whiteness.
Yeah, yes. This is something that I think about and talk about a lot, which is, I think there's power is proximity to whiteness.
Yeah.
Because that's what we've been told for our entire lives, that is power, right? And I also think that the other most powerful thing is money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can't have one, and you can have the other, and sort of you think it makes you level up, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that the play for me, the different characters all sort of represent different real backgrounds and histories, but they also represent different statuses, and like what everyone has that is their own status. Like for somebody it's their it's their job, for somebody else it's the amount of money they have, for somebody else it's their literal body, and so we all use the status that we can use. But I think for Orlando, what he has is money, and he knows that he has it, or he doesn't have it, but he thinks he has it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think without giving away the exact sort of like things about the play, plot of the play, the journey of Orlando is really that he learns that money's not going to change how people view him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think the American problem for immigrants. That, and it's like in real life, even now, like you watch all these people, it's so humiliated and sad for them, I think. But like all these Latinos who are like part of ICE, and you're like, oh, because you think that if you came here the proper way, and if you join ICE, then those white people will allow you into the circle and you'll be one of them. And it's funny, and I'm like, now watching some of these ICE people and like their families get deported, I'm like, you know, some of these Trump voters, I'm like, you voted for it, you asked for it, you thought that if you did this, you would be separate from the rest of us, you know? And I see that in you know, a lot of immigrant and ethnic communities, right? It's like the way that, you know, Latinos also have such a caste system of like who they think is like, you know, well, you know, we're Latino, but we're not as bad as the Mexicans. And then it's like, well, the Argentinians are like, well, but we are white, so we are not like the Cuban, you know, or like whatever. So like, and I'm like, no, we're all Latinos, and yes, we are different in our sort of like specific cultural things, but to white American conservatives, we're all fucking trash.
Well, and that's also discussed in the play, the way in which, you know, the character Orlando is like, his family's from Honduras, and like those characters who are Mexican immigrants, and it's discussed in the play a bit, like pulls the curtain back on discussions that are had within the Latina community about this hierarchy and class system, which often is like in relativeness to whiteness and Europeanness. But it is like it gets discussed. Like I was, you know, once again Mexican, and he was always like, oh, everyone hates the Mexicans. Right. Every single one of this, like that is like the one that they all attack. Or they all denigrate. You know.
But it is funny. I think that we're just trying to get to this whiteness, and I think now, you know, the play is set in 2002, but I think now we in 2026 we're in, you know, in this horribly tumultuous, awful time. But I think part of it is because I think people are really like, actually, you can't, you know, white isn't the most important thing in the world anymore, and so white people are fighting for their last. It's the breath of a dying white man who wants to fight back. But I think that we're all sort of like trying to dismantle that now. But I think 20 odd years ago, we wouldn't even consider that. You know.
All that in a comedy.
I mean, it is funny. It is a funny.
It's a fun and warm and sexy comedy.
We're funny. The gays are funny. You know.
You said it's like gays have good taste. Expensive taste.
If you really want comedy, it's the funniest thing is watching my dad watch the play. You know.
How so?
Because you know that there's a scene in the play that's incredibly provocative.
Oh, yes, that's right.
That's the real thing. It's like watching my dad have to sit through that every time.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And actually, Nicholas is at our show. You know, he also looks. So you, me, and Nick all look white. We look incredibly white.
Very
in fact, I would say that I look the least white. I look pretty white. And Nick he grew up here. Nick, who plays Orlando, grew up here, and he is. He's Latino, and his father's coming to the play, and we were both like, maybe we should sit together and watch our dads watch the play together, and then we should both distract our dads when they're both uncomfortable about the other son. But you know, the other thing I think that the play, and by the way, I forget about this. Do you have siblings?
Yeah.
And I'm curious about how they present in the world, because one of the other things that the play really concerns itself with is colorism. You know, and in my family, like everyone in my family, including my brothers, has an accent, or like they are dark skinned. So like my little brother doesn't have an accent and is incredibly educated, but he has dark skin, so people are like, oh, you're Latino. I'm the only one that completely passes as white because I have no accent. You know, I worked to lose it, which is a problem in its own. And I look white and I can speak in a certain way, but everyone else, you're like other Latino, and so we all sort of live in the world in a completely different way. And I think that's kind of part of also what the play is that Orlando has lived in the world in a different way, right? He has actually lived as a white person because he has had money and he looks white. And I think that we can, you know, that character can be cast in sort of different ways, but for the most part it is like he looks like a white American, and so he has lived and believes he can live this way, and it's only when somebody is like, at the end of the day, we know you're not white, you know, that he realizes that, like, oh, he might be wearing pink, but like everyone can still see through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that he's like, oh, if I'm not this thing, then who am I? And I think the really sad thing is that in the way that we all live, it's when he realizes that he can't actually define himself, because everyone else is going to define him anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's, we talk about this in a really smart way with our costume designer, that he, like, all his clothes, no matter how expensive they are, no matter how good they are, nothing really, like, fits right on him, or, like, you can tell, like, it kind of looks right, but, like, the things don't really match, or, like, something is too big, or because it's clear that in a way, the way that he behaves, which is also the way that we're addressing him, is that everything is a costume that he's putting on, right? He's trying to figure out who he is, and the clothes are a metaphor for his personality, but at the end of the day, he can have all the best things and wear them right, and somebody will still be like, that's not really your outfit.
Yeah, and therefore, like, being that fear of being otherized, and that being ostracized from the tribe. That's like, it came up last night in rehearsal. Even that I recall being like 7 or 8 years old and sitting in class one day, and the kids were being brought out to go to ESL lessons. And I remember sitting there in terror, thinking, oh no, they're going to think that they're going to know I spent the weekend with my grandparents who speak Spanish. And it's why it's so scary to think of this, because now hindsight's 2020. But it's why, fast forward a handful of years, I refused to go to take Spanish in school. I didn't want to learn any more than I knew. Because I thought if I push that away from me, that people won't, that I can, like, almost deny that part of myself. And it's so sad. Instead of, like, even as an adult, reclaiming, but it's something that, like, you can see in hindsight that, like, in the 90s it was like, I lived in San Diego, Mexican was a dirty word in the 90s. And so it was like, it was something that a fear of being associated with being Latino, and like, that was so, those things it's so deep rooted. And so it's like, you're right about the colorism thing. I have no idea, for instance, if my brother felt any of that. He's fairer than I am, and so we've never talked about it.
Oh, interesting. So I'm curious, because you brought up growing up in San Diego, what that was like for you in terms of, like, what was your, like, school population, and, like, what was the majority minority, like, what, and because also given that you're so close to the border, so, like, tell me what, like, that was like.
I grew up in a very white neighborhood. There were lots of Spanish-speaking parts of the community, and lots of Latinx school kids in school, but, like, the actual community was pretty white, and so that was, if anything, made me want to try to, like, think I could attain them. Like, I could be that blonde-haired boy. That if I could just do X, Y, and Z, if I could just bleach my hair, if I could just do anything, that was attainable. And so if I could just deny, if I didn't learn Spanish, which that's the ironic thing, is that, like, all those blonde-haired boys took Spanish. But I was taking French. Because
that's Eurocentric.
Because I was like, no, I'm not. No, don't peg me as someone who speaks Spanish. No, I speak French. Oui. And so, like, and so that almost just, I actually, like, underscored it, almost kind of, like, exacerbated.
I think what's fascinating about that is, because for me, like, I grew up in San Jose, and so my high school my class alone was like 500 people, and almost every single one of them was, mostly were Asian, and there was some Latinos, and then, like, Black people, but literally there was, like, one white guy in our class that we called the white guy. And so, like, I grew up in a place where everyone was of color, and I felt like that was what it was. I didn't think racism and whiteness was a real thing. Whereas it's interesting that you grew up in this incredibly dynamic Latino brown city, but you grew up in the white pocket of it.
Or like, there's many white pockets.
But like within a white pocket of it. So in spite of growing up in, like, this...
Well, because of segregation. Like, that sounds very segregated. Like, Southeast San Diego was completely different from, like, pockets of different suburbs and things like that. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you, so, switching gears. This is the 4th production. You and I worked together at the Profile Theater with Josh Hecht in Portland, Oregon, 3 years ago. And we did
believe it's been that long? It's crazy.
It's so crazy. And so we get to revisit this play in an all-new production. What are you most looking forward to about this production?
Well, okay, I'm going to say many things. Number one, on the page, when you look at my plays, when I used to read plays, it'd be like, there's a couch stage right, and it's got a hole on the bottom, and they're so over-described, and I'm always like, you're gonna basically just have the same production in 7,000 different ways. I mean, the same way. And I'm like, that's so boring to me. Like, I write plays where there's enough openness for the actors, for the designers, for the directors, for everyone to really collaborate, because I want to go see my plays, like, and I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised. And I want to see the play done anew. And I want to be like, I didn't know you could do that. And so what I think is really exciting for me in terms of our collaboration is that this production has to be radically different simply because of the space. I mean, that alone. So I'm like, what kind of design is going to happen? And already, I mean, I know the answer to that because I saw it yesterday. And what I love about this collaboration already is that the last production was beautiful, but and I was happy with it, but because of the space of it, the set was both magical, but it was pretty naturalistic, right? Whereas this, like, you really have to create an abstract, surreal thing for it to work. And so that to me is exciting, because I'm already like, even though you and I are collaborators, and even though this is our second production, it's going to be a radically different production, and that to me is exciting, right? And what's exciting also for me is that I trust you, so like I'm excited to be like, it's going to be different, and I know it's still going to work. And that's beautiful. And the other thing is just that, you know, even yesterday you were saying things that I had never heard you say or think about the last time that we were in rehearsal together. And I think it was because we both learned in the process of watching the play after it opened, right? Like, that's what happens. And so I think it's really fun for me to be like, oh, we're going to get to explore that thing that we hadn't thought about last.
And this cast.
And this cast. This cast is
brilliant.
So different. They're so different. And so, like, but so exciting. And, you know, one of the things that I will openly say to our viewers is that it's really hard to cast Orlando every time, because he is me. So I'm always like, no, you know, I'm always judging like how they look, how they sound, because of my own stuff. And what I always say to people about Orlando is that he's not this, like, I'm going to say words that I don't mean about those actors, but I'm like, he's not ugly, or he's not all these things. He just has some small thing that to anybody else would be like, but to him, like, makes him like a beast, or makes him weird, or makes him insecure, right? So I'm like, his ears are too big, or his voice is too high, right? Like, and so he feels a little bit like, because that's how you feel in high school, like everything matters. And so one of the things, and the reason I bring that up is that one of the things is that when Nicholas auditioned for us, he walked in and I was like, no, we can't cast him, he's too attractive. He's very attractive. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, that guy cannot play me. Like, we're not doing that. And I remember, like, we hadn't really found the right person yet, and you were like, well, he's just here, let's just have him read. And I'm like, fine, like, I'm not going to cast him, sure. And he walked in, and he was just, there's a vulnerability to him that he just dropped into, and I was like, oh my God, I had not seen that done before, and I was like, oh, we have to cast him, he's so good. And since we've cast him, he and I have actually become friends and hung out, and I now know how vulnerable he is as a human, and also just where he is in his journey about his biracialness and like what he looks like in the world, and how he's connecting with his family. And so I think, like, I was like, oh, that's why he's so good. And, like, I physically was like, he's not right for it, but immediately I was like, oh no, he's the guy, because he just understands it. And so I think that's exciting to me, because now I'm like, I'm gonna get to understand that character in a different way. It's really weird to understand your plays better through other people, because sometimes you're like, I didn't know that I wrote that, and you're like, oh, but I did. But then also to be like, I am now understanding things about myself because I write about myself and you're reading me, so now I'm like, oh, that's a kind of a mind-boggling thing. So I'm excited about that. And also just like, look, I always say, like, I love, like, Tony Kushner and Oscar Eustis being, like, best friends and working for 20 years, like Lloyd Richards and, August Wilson. I'm always like, I like to build with people, so the idea of us being like, we got to work on the same play twice in 2 different cities and have 2 different productions, and what's the next thing? I think that creates more and more shorthand and just more and more, like, opportunity for discovery that I'm excited about. What about you? What are you excited about?
I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this cast.
Yeah.
And the cast is brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's incredible what they're doing with your play already. It's
Yeah.
so funny and so moving and so, oh my God, I'm dying in rehearsal.
Yeah.
I think that the creative team is incredible.
Yeah.
Like Maya Linka's set is so beautiful, so special.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so excited for what Spencer's going to do with the lighting and Saucy and the sound, and Alice's costumes I think are so beautiful and like character driven, and like I just think it's gonna be a really incredible production.
Yeah.
And I also love this play because I'm so excited for people because it's such a fun ride.
Yeah.
Like you know that you're gonna go on a ride and you know that it's going somewhere dangerous, but you don't know where, and it's so fun and so funny. Yeah. And then you can almost never predict where it's gonna actually end up. And it's so
and then it ends up where it's at. And I will say something that I thought about yesterday as well is and it's not, I don't want to make it seem like it's that play because it's not, but like 3 years ago, we always had anti-immigrant stuff. We always had deportations, but like we weren't in the middle of like the icing that's happening right now. And so I was just like, oh, this is gonna land so much harder in a you know, like the play's about a lot of things, and there's a specific thing about immigration, and that was always a big part of the play, but it wasn't, I think, the thing that people were gonna really zero in on. And I think because of where we are in this exact literal day, this moment, I think people are gonna hear that story in such a harder way, and I'm I don't know if I'm excited, nervous, scared. I don't know what the word is. Part of me is like, is it gonna land in like a more painful way? Is it gonna land in a more like, fuck yeah, let's go, you know, change the system, or like or is it gonna land in a way that they're even judge of the Orlando character because of how he behaves? So I think that I'm excited to see how the play resonates now in that sense.
Absolutely. I've had the same exact thought. You know, it's a play in essence about like, you know, a rich kid behaving badly.
Yeah.
And now it's like rich kid behaves badly, but now you have the context of like all of that's going on, you know, in the cruelty around our immigration policies, and so it's like, oh, hopefully.
Yeah.
It's so funny, I promise.
Yeah, and it's gonna be like even funnier until it's
really
not.
funny.
That drop, it's like, you know, that roller coaster drop is gonna be like twice as long, and you're like, just get us, you know. Yeah. So and I do think that the other thing I'm excited about is that it's in the Bay Area. Like it is literally a play about the Bay Area, and so I think I'm really excited to see how the hometown takes it. You know,
absolutely.
I'm like the fact that it's been done in North Carolina and like Arizona. Like I'm like those people are like, you know. So it'll be fun to be home and
It's come home and you've come home.
Yeah,
welcome home.
We're all home.
And now that whatever that play you're writing about the chasing,
chasing whites.
You'll have to bring that to NCTC.
Yeah. Listen, let's do it. I'm ready to go. We already have the cast. We're just gonna take that cast and repurpose them.
I love this.
You know?
Another sequel. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for like bringing me home. And I can't wait for people to see what we do.
Can't wait.
Yeah.